Welcome and congratulations on entering the inner circle of senior living. The Inner Circle discusses relevant topics in senior living investment, operations, financing, and beyond to drive the industry to the next level. With a continually changing environment, let's start the collaboration now.
What's up, guys, and welcome to another edition of the Inner Circle of Senior Living. I am your grateful host, Scott McCorvie, and I'm grateful because today I have the opportunity to discuss with you the most important, crucial, vital department in a senior living community. Today, we're going to discuss the sales and marketing. The sales and marketing is so specialized for senior living and unlike any other real estate class. There's a lot of key strategies that go into a very strong sales and marketing program. And the biggest one being having the right sales and marketing team. And we're going to discuss a lot of those different concepts and strategies in this episode. The sales and marketing of senior living is like the engine driving a community. It is so crucial to have a strong sales and marketing program to have for the overall success, the overall financial success of any senior living community. Because what we're talking about is way more than real estate. Having the right real estate does make a difference. Having a smart, thoughtful design, having quality construction, having a good location with site traffic, all of that is important. However, having the correct management operating group makes all the difference. You know, I was doing a tour with a very strong regional operator. This operator maintains almost 100% plus occupancy in all of his communities. And we were touring a community that's a bit older, and the design just wasn't as functional or wasn't as good as today's new construction. But he turned to me and said, "Hey, Scott, I don't let the real estate get in the way of the operations. I don't let the real estate get in the way of the success of the community." And that is so true. The operations make all the difference. And we're going to talk about a lot of those concepts that go into a strong sales and marketing program. Also, I always caution groups when I talk to them. A lot of new developers or new investors in senior living, they say, "Hey, Scott, I'll just self-manage it." Or maybe we'll start a new management group. I caution this strongly. It makes so much difference having an experienced team that has a strong sales and marketing program in place already than trying to figure it out as you go. Now, you might be able to lease it up to 75% occupancy, and that's good. You're covering your costs. However, the value creation, the value pop is really bringing that occupancy from 80% to 95% plus. It's a huge pop in your overall net operating income because at 70%, you're covering a lot of your fixed costs. However, every dollar you get above that is really going to your bottom line. So it makes all the difference to have an experienced group in there that's implementing some of these sales and marketing strategies that I'm going to talk about today. Now, let's first, before I get into some of these strategies, let's talk about senior living perception just globally right now, because this is something that really motivates me. And one of the big reasons why I wanted to launch this podcast platform, because it irks me that still senior living is the only real estate class that still the majority of residents do not want to move into it. Why is that? It's because of the perception. And we talked about some of these things. Some of it's some of the terminology we use, right? So I cringe when I hear someone say facility, assisted living facility, or ALF. I cringe at that. It's not a facility. It's a community. It's a residence, right? We've got to increase the perception of senior living. When I hear facility, I think of a hospital bed. I think of a long, cold hallway, not somewhere I want to move into for the later years of my life. So we have to first start with the terminology. But let's talk about this. So the majority of residents do not want to move into a senior living community. However, they're urged to by their friends and family. That is something we have to change, and we can change that perception together. It starts with terminology, but there's other things that we can do. Studies show, and this is really important. Studies also show that approximately 70% of an independent living resident's awake time is still spent within the resident unit. That's got to change. That's got to change, because what we're doing is asking a resident to move out of a larger house into a smaller independent living apartment unit, right? So if that's the only thing that's changing, if they're still spending the majority of the time within their unit, they're getting a downgrade to their size of their living arrangement. What we need to do is make a shift from, hey, we're downgrading your size, to look, we're upgrading your life. And now we're upgrading your life through new lifestyle. This lifestyle includes engaged programming, engaged activities. We got to think beyond bingo and bridge, because a resident can do that at their house, right? There's tons of bridge clubs and bingo places they can go to. We have to think beyond that to an upgraded lifestyle. Also, we have to think about engagement through activities, engagement through social interaction. We need to get the residents out of their units and within the community. So a lot of that comes into the activities. A lot of that comes into the design that we're talking about today too. Instead of having a private dining room that's not used maybe a couple times a year for a birthday or special function, majority of the time I see it used for new training. That's not in the resident's best unit. Instead of a private dining room, what I'm seeing now is having a demo kitchen so you can do cooking classes, right? We have to think of ways to get residents out of the unit and do things that they can't do at their house. So it's not a downgrade to their living situation, it's an upgrade to the lifestyle. So that's the biggest thing we can do to change the perception. Also, food. There's so many great ways that we can incorporate food today. It's not just having set dining times. What I'm seeing now is a lot more casual options to give a lot more functionality and optionality to the residents. Having a bistro that serves fresh pastries and sandwiches and coffees and teas, right? Because that's somewhere to go and socialize. Instead of just, okay, well, I've got dinner at 4 and, I've got 3 hours to spend before dinner and then I'll see my friends. Having engaged programming and design is so crucial. And the food is important. Having, quality food makes the world of difference. So that's the end of my rant, but I just wanted to talk about that because we need to start thinking about an upgraded lifestyle and not just a downgraded living space. Okay, so back to sales and marketing. One of the biggest things about sales and marketing is that it's all about the initial impression. It's so crucial. You can never get that back, but that initial impression that a resident and or family gets when they enter your community is basically the biggest selling point. So how do you maintain a strong initial impression? Well, one of the biggest things you can do is have a welcoming and engaged reception area. I don't know how many times I've walked into a community. It might be beautiful, so open and light, smells amazing. However, there's no one at the front desk, and I sit there for 10 minutes playing on my phone, trying to get some information or get a tour or something. I get so excited because it looks like an amazing community. I walk in, there's no one there. Or there's someone there that's on Facebook or texting someone. So having some people call it a first impression. Having that engaged reception makes all the difference. Also, having a clean, open lobby. When you walk in, is it really small? Do you feel a little bit claustrophobic? Or is it large and open and welcoming? It can make a lot of difference. And clean, Sometimes I walk in here and there's paper towels on the floor, or there's maybe food that's been dropped. Having a clean lobby makes the biggest first impression. Also, when I walk in, I like to see how engaged the residents are, right? So is your dining room that's not really utilized right there and it's empty the whole time, or you see, people cleaning up? Or when you first walk in, you have a nice lobby that's followed by a multi-purpose activity room where you see a yoga class going on, or you see a dance lesson going on, or you see a educational program going on. You see the residents engaged. That is huge. So having engaged residents, or if you don't have those options when you walk in, how engaged are the residents in the front? Are there people just sitting on the porch staring out front? Or are there some community interaction going on? Again, I talked about the bistro. Having that in the front is huge because that creates a social pocket right when you walk in. You see families and you see residents drinking coffee, eating pastries, talking reading the paper, whatever, but they're engaged. They're within the community experiencing the life. So having engaged residents, especially near the front, makes a world of difference. Also, how engaged are they when a family is doing a tour, right? I see so many amenity rooms like libraries and movie theaters, and those are great. However, they're always empty, right? So we're spending all this money to build, construct, as well as utilities for these amenity rooms that aren't really utilized besides the marketing tour. We've got to think beyond that. So if I'm walking around and I see the health center empty, I see the library empty, I see an activity center empty, it might have activities set up later, but no one's in it. That gives me the impression that these are all great things, but it's not utilized. So having resident engagement is very important. Another important thing for a first impression is maintenance. Having proper maintenance done. And I know it's hard, but maintaining painted floorboards, I know they get bumped into by walkers and wheelchairs. However, when I'm walking around and I see scuff marks everywhere, it might even just be subconsciously, but it puts a perception in my mind that this community is not properly maintained. When I see that on the flooring and things, I think of how is that in the care? Are they doing proper care if I see improper maintenance? So it just makes me think, how is the rest of the community operated when I see a lot of little scuff marks and things in the maintenance? Same thing with your flooring. I know the flooring, it's hard to maintain, especially in memory care. However, doing weekly, monthly cleanings, whatever is necessary, spending that extra money to get the spills and the stains off the carpeting. Also thinking beyond carpeting, there's a lot of new product out there that's almost the same cost effectiveness as carpeting, but it's so much easier to maintain and clean. So having the right flooring in there makes a big difference too. Also having a decorated model unit. It's about half and half when I'm doing a property tour, and I can go into a unit and it's clean, it's beautifully decorated, it's open, it smells amazing. That makes a big difference versus I'm going around with someone and they're trying to knock on doors to see if someone will allow us to see their unit, and they may be taking a nap at that time. So it's just not the same impression versus walking into a model unit. I know it's a good thing to have. If you're full and you can't afford a model unit, I get it. Maybe having a few key units that are nicely decorated and you have a good rapport with that resident, that you can show that unit at will, maybe give them a slight discount to their rates or some kind of gift or something. But it makes a big difference in having a unit ready to show versus walking around trying to find one and then going into one where maybe you can't even turn on the lights, right? So it makes a big difference. Model unit is the way to go. Also, a resident welcoming committee. That makes a big difference too, right? We're talking about resident engagement. So if a resident is thinking about moving in, the marketing staff can tell them everything that's so great, and that, definitely helps. However, if they can hear the activities and how great the community is from a fellow resident, that makes a world of difference. So having a resident welcoming committee can really impact the decision of that resident and family. Now, this is a little thing, but it makes a big difference too. Having fresh pastries, water, coffee, tea available at almost all times makes a big impression to the residents and family, right? We talked about food. Food's a big deal. If you can give a pastry that's really good and a cup of coffee prior to giving the tour or after the tour, that goes so far. And it doesn't cost hardly anything, right? The kitchen can work on that between meals or whatnot. But having fresh pastries and coffee and tea is huge in the overall impression. And now I'm going to talk about this. The tour is crucial. I've been on good tours and I've been on not so good tours. I can tell for the most part during the tour what the occupancy is and the financials are to a certain degree. I can tell what those are, what the performance is, without ever saying one document of financials or one document of the occupancy. I can tell by the level and the quality of the tour, and especially the staff giving the tour. And this goes into how engaged they are, how passionate they are about showing the community, how clean the community is, and lastly, how engaged the residents are when I'm doing the tours. And it's not just engagement of residents to residents, it's residents to staff. Does that marketing director know the resident by name? Do they ask some questions, right? Is there that interaction? Do I feel that? Or is it a very, as I call it, like a stale or stoic tour where I'm just getting kind of hustled through to see a unit and some of the common areas and then out the door? It makes all the difference, right? And we're all talking about maintaining a competitive advantage so that we can maintain and increase our occupancy. And having a healthy occupancy, again, makes a big difference in your overall bottom line. So that's a lot of concepts that go into the first impression. And again, you can never get that first impression back. And that first impression is so critical. So I hope you can utilize some of those. Okay, next let's talk about some actual sales and marketing techniques. Now, these sales and marketing techniques are some things that you should be utilizing right now in your overall marketing strategy. Now, I'm not going to go into advertising because I think the best advertising and marketing you can do is word of mouth and or referrals and your reputation. It sells itself. You don't have to spend $1 in direct mailings, in print advertising, in placement agencies. You don't have to spend $1 in your marketing budget to maintain a very strong reputation, which goes from word of mouth. So let me talk about a couple of techniques you can utilize to try to enhance your reputation and enhance your word of mouth referral sources. Again, if you're relying on direct mailing right now, you're in trouble. It's not a very effective technique. Think about it. You've got to spread such a wide net that you could be reaching the person that's within the age and income qualifications, right? That's also looking for community at that specific time. I mean, the residents really, if you get a mailer, unless they're actively looking right then, it's likely going in the trash can and not making an impression. So direct mailing and placement agencies, those are so expensive too. A Place for Mom and all those, I'm sure a lot of you use it. However, they're so expensive and there's so many more cost and more effective techniques you can use besides those marketing and advertising sources. Now, word of mouth, reputation, foot traffic, it's the golden ticket. You need to get people, you need to get bodies within your community. It doesn't matter what age group they are. You need to get them in your community because that is how you start that word of mouth referral source. They have to come in and get a good impression. When they do that, then they're going to discuss that with friends and families that might be looking for a senior living community at that time. That's really how it happens. Someone says, we're thinking about, moving mom into this, independent living, or mom's thinking about moving into independent living. She's not sure yet, or we're starting to think that we need some more care and thinking about assisted living. That's when that conversation happens. When that question or comment is brought up, someone else will say, well, I just went into so-and-so down the street. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. You should go in there. Their dining room is top notch. Their staff was so awesome. Scott, or, their food was amazing. I had no idea they had this kind of dining at one of these communities. I'd never been in one before. That's really what you're looking for. That's the golden ticket. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing is you need to utilize your meeting space for local groups. It's so important to have groups coming in to utilize your meeting space. It could be dining room. It could be activity room. It could be your theater. Anywhere that you have meeting space. When it's not, being used for meal service, which is the majority of the time, it's not being utilized. Please reach out. Have groups use your meeting space. And on top of that, provide them some food. So it could be a lunch. You could have a sandwich platter there with a few sides. Or at least have fresh coffee and tea, along with pastries, cookies, desserts, something. That makes a huge impression, goes a long way. It's so important, and it really does not cost you much. Comparative to other advertising costs, providing some food does not cost you that much for what you're getting in return. It's such a huge investment. Now, some of these local groups that you should be reaching out to see if they'd like to meet, say, hey, we'll provide your lunch if you want to come meet here. Or, hey, come in here. We'll have coffee. We'll have some pastries, some breakfast items. Just come on in for an hour and you can utilize our dining room or half of our dining room or our activity room or a private dining room. You can utilize the space for your meeting. We'd love to have you in. Some of these groups that you can bring in, and this is just a small list, there's any group that you can get in is really important. But Rotary clubs, professional groups, professional associations, realtors, real estate groups, so they always like to meet a lot. Educational groups, right? Think about that. Healthcare organizations, huge. Anything, physician groups, there's so many opportunities of groups that either might be meeting in a community center or someone's clubhouse in an apartment complex, something, reaching out to church groups. There's so many different groups that you can have that are meeting elsewhere that can come into your community, and then boom, you can make that impression. Now, before I got into the career of senior living, I had the perception, and I know a lot of people do too, because whenever I talk about senior living, I'm passionate about it. So I talk about it a lot, not just at work, but in my personal life. When I'm talking about senior living, people think nursing home, right? And that's what I thought of when I first started hearing senior living or assisted living. I thought nursing home. However, that is not the case. So getting people in to seeing your community, having them experience your staff, right? So when they come in, maybe the marketing director comes and welcomes them and talks to them and says, is there anything you need? Maybe I can give you a tour after you're done. That creates engagement. That creates that impression that you want for that person later on down the road. When someone asks them about senior living options, boom, it clicks. Oh, hey, I went to so-and-so and their food is amazing. They had the greatest staff. It's so nice in there. You should go for sure. That's what you're looking for. So please utilize local groups to use your meeting space for their meetings. That is so huge. And it's such a small investment. Like I said, having some food options there is such a small investment for the return that you're gonna get. It's so much more effective and so much cheaper than any other marketing source, direct mailing, print advertising, radio advertising, internet marketing, all of that. You can utilize that. However, if you're not utilizing your meeting space for local groups, then you're really just wasting money. I think this is a good time to take a break. I'm going to take a couple minute break and we will be back and we're going to discuss a lot more exciting things about sales and marketing for senior living. Be right back, guys. This episode is brought to you by Senior Living Growth Advisors. Senior Living Growth Advisors can help you with the full spectrum of the investment and operation process. Whether it's structuring and closing new acquisitions, finalizing a development opportunity, accessing the specialized capital markets, implementing prudent asset management procedures, or just improving the operational efficiency of a community, let Senior Living Growth Advisors leverage years of experience and industry relationships to bring you to the next level. Visit srgrowth.com to learn more on how you can achieve your desired growth success. That's www.srgrowth.com. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Inner Circle of Senior Living. I am your host, Scott McCorvie, and you can probably hear the passion in my voice because I'm talking about senior living and specifically sales and marketing for senior living communities. And as I mentioned in the first part of this program, it's so important for your overall success and financial success of any senior living community. Maximizing that occupancy, going from that 70 to 80% to that 95+% makes a huge impact to your bottom line. And that's because a lot of your fixed costs are covered when you're hovering around 70%. So it's almost a true dollar impact to your bottom line when you maximize that occupancy. So today we're talking about a lot of concepts and strategies that should be going into your sales and marketing program and your sales and marketing team to maximize your occupancy, which will make a huge impact to your bottom line. So we talked about some of the things that you should be considering when you're talking about sales and marketing. The biggest one being having a strong referral word of mouth network. And to do that, you really need to be utilizing your space for local groups to meet with. So next, we're going to talk about a few different strategies. We also talked about the initial impression and how huge that is, and a lot of things that you can do to try to enhance that first impression. Okay, next, let's talk about the sales and marketing team itself, because this is a big impact as well. Having the right team in there, having the right synergies in that team can make a huge difference. So it really is important to have the right engaged, synergistic marketing team in your senior living community. Some of the things you need to look at, or what can really show the strength of the sales and marketing team, is how engaged are they in the local community? Again, it's all about having that reputation. If groups aren't coming into your space or the community space for their meeting, I hope your sales and marketing team is going out to them, giving presentations, going out, maybe bringing some coffee and pastries, right? Going out and putting your name out in the local community so that name is relevant in everyone's mind when the decision is made to go to senior living. How available is your sales and marketing team for tours? Now, some families and residents like to set up a tour. However, a majority of them come straight off the street and want a tour and might even have a checkbook ready to close right then. And you have to be ready. So many times I've come in and I'm looking at a community, and again, I'm standing in the lobby. It might be even a dirty lobby, right? I'm looking at the reception who's playing on the phone, either a game or texting someone, right, for 5 to 10 minutes. They finally look at me, call me over, and I'm like, hey, I'm Scott McCorvie. I'd love to get a tour. Oh, no one's available to give a tour right now. Click, that's it, right? That's not good. There always needs to be someone available, an option to provide a tour. Because if I hear that, then I'm like, oh, and they're like, oh, you can come back. Okay, how likely am I going to come back? Boom, you blew my impression right there. So having someone available to give a tour is very important. Now let's talk about how we can track our inquiries, tours. A lot of these important metrics need to be tracked so you can see month to month how you're doing. And if you're a manager and you have a number of communities, you can track community to community or region to region what these numbers look like. And these numbers are important to track in every senior living community or strong asset management program. Now, there's specific software you can get, but I'm going to talk about some of the terms that you should be tracking on a weekly, a monthly, a quarterly, and annual basis. These are very important numbers, metrics, and ratios that you should be very familiar with in your sales and marketing program. First, let's talk about inquiries. Now, inquiries can be a number of things. It could be an email. It could be nowadays a text message or a comment on a Facebook company profile or Twitter or Instagram, right? There's so many ways to do an inquiry now. A lot of them are still just the old phone call or a visit off the street. Now, these are all inquiries, and the first thing you need to do anytime you get an inquiry is get their information. I don't know how many times I've called or even gotten a tour, and no one ever got my information to follow up with me. That is a huge and costly mistake. So make sure at that initial inquiry, you're getting their information so you can follow up with them. But the first thing to do is track your inquiries, because that is the overall initial statistic that you need to know before you can have any resident move in. They're going to reach out to your community first. So tracking the inquiries. Next is tracking the sources of the inquiries. How did you hear about us? How did you contact us? Right? I like to know right off the bat who's making a decision. And a lot of times it's the residents, a lot of times it's the adult children of the residents, or it's a collaboration. But that's important information to know. So knowing the source, how did you hear about our community? Is it, again, word of mouth? Is it a certain referral? Is it a advertising? Is it they've driven by it? It's important to track this for your marketing so you know where to spend most of your dollars in your marketing budget. So after that, we're going to talk about, so that's the sources. Next is a crucial metric to know is how many tours you're giving. So there's the old saying that you don't go on a car lot unless you're looking to buy a car. And that's pretty close with tours too. If a resident or family is willing to come to your community and take a tour, they are serious about moving in, and you need to take that inquiry, that perspective very seriously. And a tour can make the world of difference. Being led on a quality tour is extremely important to the overall decision. Again, we talked about first impression. A lot of that goes into the tour. How engaged is the employee giving the tour, the marketing team? How engaged are the residents? How clean is the community? How engaged are the employees to the residents? If I'm walking around the marketing director and she knows everyone's name, that's huge. Also, invite them for lunch or dinner, especially if you have a good food program. If you don't have a good food program, this might not be an advantage for you. But having a resident come in and seeing a dining service, a meal service, is so crucial because they get to, again, experience the food, which should be a selling point. If your raw food costs are $3 or $4 a day per resident day, you need to change that like immediately. Having the right food quality is so important to the overall upgraded lifestyle that we're talking about. It's an upgrade. It's so important for the residents' overall satisfaction. And word of mouth. A lot of times the first thing a resident will say to another resident is, the food is amazing. So having quality food is important. So invite them in for lunch, for dinner. If not, have coffee, pastries, all that available. That makes a big impact to the residents and the families, and it's very low cost of investment. Talking about tours, I can tell, again, almost immediately when I've been giving a tour, what the actual financial and occupancy performance is without seeing one piece of data. And again, that is how important a tour is in maintaining that strong occupancy. Next, let's talk about another metric is follow-ups. Again, you don't know how many times I've been in a community, I've talked with the reception, I've been given a tour, and then they say, hey, have a great day. They never get my contact information. Or how many times I've called up a community and the marketing director's not there, which might happen if, like I said, if they're in the community, that's great, right? So they don't have to be there immediately. Hopefully someone on the staff is there to gauge questions and to also get my contact information. But sometimes a follow-up call is needed. You don't know how many times I've given my information and it might be a week later before I receive a follow-up call. That is no good. That is absolutely no good. That follow-up call is very important to happen immediately, and to close them on coming in for a tour is very important too. A phone call is good, but having them in, again, a body in your community is what you're looking for. And if it's a prospective resident body, that is so important. The next metric we're going to talk about is actual closing. And closing can be looked at a few different ways. What I like to say is closing as putting a deposit. I like a resident to put a nominal, non-refundable deposit down to reserve their spot at the community. I like a resident to be so invested that they're willing to write a check on the spot to reserve their space. Again, it's because of competition can be coming up. Decisions can be made later down the road. So acting on that closing then, getting a resident to buy into the overall culture and the upgraded lifestyle that they're going to experience, and writing a check on the spot, a non-refundable nominal deposit could be $500. It doesn't have to be big. It's not the whole community fee, but some type of investment that resident is willing to make so that you know and they know that they're moving into the community when either a unit opens up, the right unit's opening up, or that they're just waiting for a certain time to move in. But I think that's very important. But definitely tracking the deposits and or the move-ins, the resident move-ins, is a very important metric. Also, having the marketing team always know the available units that are able to be occupied. A lot of times I go into a community too and they don't know, or they're scrambling to find out what's even open. A good marketing team should always know which units are open and have the option to be sold. So we talked about some of these important metrics to track and maintain and keep a good knowledge of. Next, I'm going to talk about some of the conversion ratios that can be utilized at your community and should be utilized at your community to really see how your marketing is doing. The first conversion ratio is inquiries to tours. This is important because you want that resident in your community. So if they're calling and they're not coming in for a tour, that's not good. You really need this number to be high. If they're interested, why not come in for a community tour, right? They should be coming in. Do you need to offer more incentive? A free meal, some kind of a gift, something. Because if they're interested enough to call you or to send you an email, then they should be coming into your community for at least a tour. So that's should be a high number, but something that's important to keep a track of. Next one is tours to deposits. Now this one might not be as high, but you need to track it for a number of different reasons. If it's low, and it might be low, what is it about it? And that's something that's important about the follow-up with the resident. If they're not selecting your community, why are they not selecting your community? Is there a certain reason? And finding out which community they did select and why they're selecting that competitive community. It's so important. Is it because of the locations better? Is it because of the design better? They might not give you a straight answer, but if you're hearing the same thing over and over, it's time to make a change. So knowing why your competition is getting that resident is very, very important. So tracking tours to deposits, that's an important number because again, if they're coming in to do a tour, they're at least pretty interested in moving in. So tracking that conversion ratio is important. Also, follow-up to deposit. Again, you need to be making follow-up calls after a tour. So knowing the follow-up to the deposit is also an important number because sometimes, they're touring several communities. So it might not be a decision on the spot from the tour. However, how many times are you following up with them? Is it every couple of days? Is it every week? There needs to be consistent follow-up until you finally get an answer about where they're moving in. Or the resident says, hey, we're just not, we need a few more months, right? So then you put in your system, we'll call back in a few months. Okay, guys, those are some of the key metrics and conversion ratios to really incorporate into your sales and marketing program. Next thing to track is competition. We talked about this, but competition, again, if they're not selecting your community, which community are they selecting and why? Very important. Also, if they're not selecting your community because of a unit type, you need to find out what unit type they're looking for. So are they looking for 2 bedrooms and all you have is studios available? That might be the case. However, if that is continually being brought up, maybe it's time to do some conversions, putting a couple studios together. If all your studios are vacant, you got a problem. So you can do conversions. You can convert studios into a 1-bedroom, sometimes even studios into a 2-bedroom based on how they're configured. But there needs to be a decision made. Or if it's in a market that the price point is so high, the 2 bedrooms are just not affordable and all the studios are filled. You have to know what unit type the resident is looking for. Last one to keep a track of, and this is so important too, is your referrals. Like I said, word of mouth and the referral sourcing makes all the difference to the occupancy. It's so big. But tracking those referrals, is it based on a current resident? Are they making the referral? Or is it based on an employee? Are they making a referral? Or is it based on a physician? Are they making a referral? Keeping track of your referrals is so important because, and this, a lot of times there's different ways to do this, but if it's employee, you can give a certain bonus to them based on referrals. If it's an employee, maybe they get a discount to their rent. There's different gifts and incentives that you can get to really enhance your referral networking. So it's extremely important to track and to incentivize your referral network. Those are basically the concepts and terms and ratios you need to keep a track of. But you can really, if you really maximize these strategies in your marketing program, you're going to see a big difference in your overall occupancy. Pre-marketing is so crucial for new development. A lot of times I talk with developers and they don't quite understand what goes into the operations before the community is opened. A lot of times a trailer or a marketing department sets up shop 9 to 12 months before opening. That's huge. That's not the case for any other real estate class. This is senior living. It's very specialized and specific. So having an engaged operator that understands what goes into the pre-marketing is so important for a new development. Also, let's talk about marketing employee compensation. There's a lot of different ways to do this. You can be all salary, you can be almost all commission. What I like is a mix between the two, having a base salary and a commission based on certain move-ins. Now, when I say certain move-ins, I've worked on a lot of different communities, and I find that they get the same commission if a resident comes from a referral agency like a Place of Mom versus they go out there and find the employee and tour them and close them themselves. That should not be the case. You don't need to be paying twice for a referral agency. So is it a combination of salary and incentivized commission based on certain move-ins? So that's, there's a lot of different ways to do that, but having the right compensation structure is very important to creating that alignment and that really incentivizes the sales and marketing team to maximize your occupancy. Senior living is unlike any other real estate, and the sales and marketing is unlike the sales and marketing in any other real estate class itself. So it's so important to have a dedicated and experienced senior living team. Also, this isn't what my consulting group does. However, there are specific consultants just to increase and maximize your sales and marketing program. If you reach out to me, I'm happy to give some recommendations. But if you are struggling with occupancy, it might make sense to reach out and to engage one of these senior living sales and marketing consultants. That's it, guys. I hope this was helpful for you. I'm grateful again that you are listening, and I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to help share some of my passion with you. There's so much that goes into senior living operations. There's so much that goes into the sales and marketing, and I'm just so happy to have the opportunity to share this with you. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you just want to reach out and say hi, that you enjoy this show, feel free to send me an email. My email is Scott, SCOTT, @srgrowth.com. Please shoot me an email. Would love to hear from you. Or if you want to set up a time to get on an intro call, if you're interested in the show and you want to get more involved, let me know. If you have a certain show topic, would love to hear that as well. So please reach out to me anytime you can. Would love for you if you could subscribe for the show. That's the best way to get the latest and greatest releases. If you could review it 5 stars, that would be amazing. We'd be BFFs forever. Get involved in our social media groups. The best way to do that is you can either search the Inner Circle of Senior Living, or if you go to the website srgrowth.com, there'll be a menu selection there for the Inner Circle that has a link to all of our podcast platforms as well as our different social media platforms. But get involved. There's also going to be a web series coming out shortly that's going to talk about certain topics, not as long as the podcast, but there is going to be a web series. So you're going to want to check that out because there's some exciting shows we have in the works. Guys, thanks so much again for allowing me the opportunity to share this with you. As you know, I love senior living, and I'm just very grateful for this opportunity. I also want to give a big thank you for everyone that's reached out for the launch of this show. I want to say thank you, and I'm so appreciative for every single email, LinkedIn message, text message, phone call, everything that you have reached out. You guys are so amazing, and I really thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thanks so much, and I'm so excited for the future ahead of this show. Please interact with, we're going to have some questions out there. Get involved. Guys, it's your time to get out there, really learn and share your knowledge and experience. And you know what? Let's all go out there and make a difference.
We appreciate you participating in the Inner Circle of Senior Living. Now, it's your turn to help spread the message. Be sure to share your questions and comments with the Inner Circle community and discuss the different topics with your friends and colleagues. Until next time, thanks for joining the Inner Circle of Senior Living.